Well, even though you can't see me, it's Jessika Guse here with RealAg.com, and we're at day 2 of the Canadian Beef Industry Conference. And joining me right now is Emily Murray, who is the General Manager of the McDonald's beef sector within Cargill. So thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us about the CBSA pilot program, which is the Canadian Beef
Sustainability Acceleration Pilot.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a mouthful.
There is.
We debated how to condense it. But
I am learning all of the acronyms this week. So I am happy to know that it is the CBSA pilot. So with this third quarter, there is some kind of new and some exciting news in regards to what's coming up here in the fall. Explain to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so with the third quarter of the pilot, because we had kicked it off last year, October, we were able to realize 1 million pounds, or just over 1 million pounds, of beef from certified sustainable sources. So that means that this beef came through our facility from entirely audited supply chains. Every operation within the supply chain, every operation that touched that cattle at some point had been audited according to the Canadian Roundtable for Sustainable Beef Standards. And so getting over the 1 million threshold for pounds for volume was really exciting for us. When people asked in the beginning how far we'd get when, I was not willing to make any promises, because I'm like, if we get 10 cattle, I'll be excited. But to be able to see that growth and to see how well we've been able to quickly escalate it has been very promising for the future.
And there's a little bit of an incentive for the producer to have this kind of traceability, right? Explain to me that.
Absolutely. So traditionally, value is derived in the supply chain through premiums that are, through the price at time of sale. With this, we're trying to kickstart this effort. This is something that we're trying to really start something new in the industry. And so what we've done is created a retroactive credit payment. So a kind of a thank you for producers who had signed up, who had participated, who had invested in their time, their energy, their resources in an audit ahead of time for cattle that have qualified. So once they've had cattle go through to qualify, they get a credit payment back to thank them for having that cattle come through to qualify and having taken that time to manage and to run the operation. The credit payments occur because we have retailers and food service, so several Cargill's customers, who have paid us an incentive for beef that we're able to deliver to them and allocate to them from the sustainable sources. And so we take a large portion of that, just over half of that credit payment each quarter, and we distribute it back to all those producers who had touched the animals that qualified. That were involved.
And so what's the feedback been like with over, like you said, 1 million pounds of beef from certified sustainable sources? Obviously, these producers are doing it for a good reason. They want to be a part of this movement to get that beef out there.
Yeah.
What's that feedback been like? Other than obviously, it's kind of nice for a couple extra, dollar signs in your pocket.
Yeah. Well, I'll start with on the retail side. So retail and food service feedback has been very positive in that they're saying, "What's next? What else can we do?" So for each of the customers that have signed up with the pilot, they initially signed up their smaller, some of their niche or smaller programs or product lines. Some of their brands that have more concentrated volume that we were able to focus on. But they're all immediately saying, with this growth, when can we sign up some of our larger commodity items? When can we sign up some of the larger scale products? And so we're seeing demand definitely pay attention to that kind of growth. On the producer side, I agree with you. I mean, the check is nice, the credit payment's nice, but they're only getting that credit for the animals that qualify. There's still a huge industry to go, right, as far as the growth that we have potential for. And so it's not like that's necessarily covering the investment costs at the outset. But the response that we're getting, to answer your question, specifically with producers outside of the credit payment, is recognition that it's actually really easy. We tend to get from people, I really didn't have to do anything different. I didn't change my practices. I prepped a little more. It's kind of like studying for a test. I got my paperwork in order so that when the auditor came, I was ready to go. So it took, an afternoon for that. But it wasn't like they were making significant changes, and then they were able to see that return and that value. The other thing that we're seeing is they're really enjoying seeing the retailers prepare these claims and messages. They're going to talk about why this is important and speak on their behalf. They're enjoying seeing us as Cargill and our customers be advocates for the beef industry and be able to finally message with real information, with real specifics that consumers want to know about what they're doing at their operations and tell those stories for them and on their behalf.
And what would be those specifics? Like, what is some of this branding, I guess, that has been pushed out there that some people, if they're watching this video, might have seen and be like, oh, that makes sense, that's part of this?
Yeah, so you're going to start to see a lot more coming up soon because the Canadian Roundtable will be launching this fall their certified sustainable beef framework, which will include a logo that's produced by the Canadian Roundtable, so a third party and industry-led framework with a logo that could be put on product that meets the criteria, that meets the standards. So once you see the logo come out this fall on products, and McDonald's announced at Stampede that they're going to be one of the first, and we're going to have others that are right behind them, that we're even having conversations this week with folks about how soon we can get logos on product. That's really going to be what you're going to see in the coming months. What we're seeing now, though, is a lot of messaging about the supply chain, about the industry and industry practices. And so these audits for sustainable beef, it's an operation-based audit, not an animal-based audit. So it's not about the meat itself or the animal. It's about the behaviors, the practices, the ethics and culture that are on site in the operations. And so we're looking for, when the auditors are there, they're conversing and identifying outcomes that are specific to environmental improvements and best practices as far as managing of your environment, your water, your land resources. Animal welfare is a huge component, and also people welfare, so the economics. So is this going to be viable? Is this something that generations to come will want to continue to be beef producers, will want to continue to be ranchers? And so even though sustainability, I think itself as a word, is not something that consumers necessarily going to see other than on the logo or on that package claim, but the stories about sustainable practices, the responsibility that the producers take for their sourcing, those will be the things you'll see. So there's stories about using solar panels to help with energy resources. There's stories about pastures and how people manage their pastures and manage rotational grazing. And then a lot of things, like I said, about animal welfare and the use of different antibiotics or resources responsibly, judiciously in the industry.
And now, kind of in closing, I guess, what going forward? So I believe these payments are going to start to kind of roll out this October, I believe.
So we've been paying on the credits since
already?
last October. Yeah. So the first quarter payments, as we were building the program, the first quarter payments I think were paid in early 2018. So this is the third installment of payments. And so the first payment was about $10 a head. And again, we've built an algorithm for how the payments get allocated across producers that qualify and the number of cattle. And it's going to be based on the amount of volume that qualifies for the customers whose product lines it's being allocated to. It's a matter of the weights of cattle, because weights change throughout the year, and the number of producers that were involved. Some animals stay on one operation their entire time, and others are in multiple operations. And so we've divided across in that way. So we saw $10 a head roughly in the first quarter. And then we got to $20 a head in the second quarter, and then we're down to the about $18.50. And really, it's just the difference there is, like I said, just an algorithm based on those different levers that I talked about before. But so we're seeing those payments come through. We're going to continue to do them. We had committed in the beginning to be paying credit payments for the first year of the program, so we'd have one more quarter left in that first year. But as we discussed yesterday in some of the meetings here at the conference, we're going to be looking to extend that. We're not quite sure yet exactly how long we're going to be extending the credit payments, but it shows it's working. Ultimately, what we really want to do, back to my original statement, is we want to be able to build in a premium in the industry where, based on supply and demand, just like any other premium product that you see, the premium will kind of ebb and flow. So if there's a lot of demand with less product, with less supply, you're going to see a higher premium, which is really what we're dealing with right now. But we need to change some things in the technology to really get to the point where cattle can be sold with this eligibility status on them. Right now, we're looking at everything retroactively. So we're only on being able to understand right now the credit payments when the cattle are processed, not at the time of sale. And so once we get to that point, we'll be re-looking at how long credits will need to happen, because it'd be much better for that producer to get that check in hand at the time of cattle purchase rather than having wait 3 to 15 months before they see any results.
Exactly. And now, how do producers kind of become a part of this? Is there still a way to hop onto this program?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why we're extending the credits, because we really want to keep pushing and keep building the volume, because our customers are asking for it. And so if a producer wants to get involved, it's actually really simple. You don't sign up. The pilot's not something you sign up for. You just do, and then you're instantly qualifying for it. And so what we need to do is make sure that everybody qualifies for the requirements of the Roundtable for Sustainable Beef. And so you'll need to be audited. And right now, the recognized auditors are VBP Plus and an organization called Where Food Comes From. So VBP Plus has a program that's already out there that's deemed as equivalent to the standards. And then Where Food Comes From will conduct their own audit as well. So either one of those organizations, and you can go to our website or go to VBP or Where Food Comes From websites to learn more. And then once you're audited, you just need to make sure that you're entering your ear tags into the CCIA database and giving BIX, who is our service provider on the chain of custody tracking. So Cargill's using BIX to help track cattle for us. You need to be able to give them access, give them permission to access your CCIA ear tags. And that's it.
Seems pretty easy, and like you said, they're already kind of somewhat enrolled into the program as long as you know, they are doing that. So.
And I would say audit is a word that generally producers kind of cringe at a little bit. I think
it's
not
scary.
something. Yeah, it's a little bit. I mean, it's scary for any of us,
Yeah.
right? Anytime there's an audit. But what we're finding is auditors are really well trained. A lot of them are producers themselves or had been in the past, so they get the operation. They're not just coming in, and it's not a quiz, it's a conversation, right? It's really about continuous improvement. So unless there's going to be certain practices that we don't want to see in the industry, but we wouldn't want to see anyways, that could be barriers to entry. So if you're harming your animals or things like that. But otherwise, it's really a learning experience. And people have found that even when they're not fully prepared, they come and have the conversation, they learn something. And they've always said, you know, I didn't have to change my operation, but I chose to because I learned something from the auditor that I hadn't realized before. Or maybe they've shared a practice that the auditor can share with others. And so it's really about engaging with others and learning more from each other.
It's fascinating with this industry how much there is to learn, and like you said, with technology as it's growing, hopefully you guys will be able to expand it even further. Well, thank you so much, Emily, for your time today.
No, thank you.
I will be sure to add that link for if they are wanting to learn more to our website, realagriculture.com. Thanks so much.
Yeah, great. Thank you.